Every person is equal before the law and has the right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law. Equality guaranteed under the Constitution includes the full and equal enjoyment of all rights and fundamental freedoms. The Constitution further provides that women and men have the right to equal treatment, including the right to equal opportunities in political, economic, cultural, and social spheres. Clause 4 prohibits the state from either direct or indirect discrimination based on the grounds outlined above. The Constitution obligates the state to take necessary steps to give full effect to the article on equality and freedom from discrimination. Such steps, the state is mandated to ensure they are adequate and befits accruing to be enjoyed in genuine need. The statute, the prevention, protection, and assistance to internally displaced persons and affected communities Act number 56 of 2012. The Act was enacted and assented into law on 31st December 2021. It makes provisions for prevention, protection, and provisions of assistance to IDPs and affected communities and give effect to the Great Lakes Protocol on the protection and assistance of IDPs and the United Nations guiding principles on internal displacement and for connected purposes. Analysis. Section 3 of the Act provides that the protocol and the guiding principles shall apply subject to the Constitution and the Act to all IDPs in Kenya. Section 8 provides for assistance and protection of IDPs, especially to those who have special dependency to their land and protection of women, children, and persons with disabilities, the elderly, and others with special needs. Further, the government is required to formulate programs for assistance and protection in consultation with the IDPs. Additionally, the Act mandates the government to provide durable solutions to IDPs and ensure respect for the rights of IDPs to make informed and voluntary decisions on whether to return, locally integrate, or resettle elsewhere in the country. The national government bears the ultimate responsibility for the administrative implementation of the Act. The county government bears responsibility for the administrative implementation of the Act in accordance with their functions under Article 186 and the 4th Schedule of the Constitution. The Act mandates the national government with the duty of ensuring safety and security of IDPs and creating conducive conditions and providing IDPs with durable and sustainable solutions. Under the Act, the national government ensures the humanitarian support is afforded to IDPs through the Cabinet Secretary and the National Consultative Coordination Committee on IDPs. The function of the committee is spelled out in Section 13 of the Act. The committee, in doing its work, ensures the prudent management of the humanitarian fund established in the Act and whose use is provided under Section 15. This fund is supposed to be used for IDPs for settlement to their former homes or alternative settlement sites, replacement of their basic household effects, enabling them to restart their basic livelihood, reconstruction of their destroyed housing, and rehabilitation of community utilities, etc. The Constitution, under paragraph 5, Chair and members, we discuss the right of every person to petition Parliament. In conclusion, therefore, in the light of the foregoing legal provisions and in consideration of this petition, the committee is supposed to seek more information from the petitioners, especially establish the numbers and the current state in which the petitioners live. This can be done by inviting the petitioner to shed more light on the petition. Next, request the Cabinet Secretary for Interior to provide information on the status of IDPs compensation in Kenya, and especially the petitioners. Next, request the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury to provide information on the availability of the humanitarian fund. Next, request the National Consultative Coordination Committee on IDPs to provide information on the issues of compensation of the petitioners. And finally, seek the views of Kenya National Human Rights Commission. Thank you very much, Chair and members.
Thank you, Legal Counsel. Waziri, allow me to ask the member who has just walked in to introduce himself.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry for walking in a bit late. My name is Kivai Kagesi, Mbunge wa Vihiga, and a member of this committee. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Honorable Kagesi. Waziri and the team, I think we are now on the same page. That's all we've been dealing with, what you've heard. And from the brief, you've heard that there is a part where we have to get the CS for Interior is expected to provide information. That is what we are dealing with today. That the part we want to handle is the next few minutes. So Waziri, I'll give you, I know you are squeezed of time. We are also squeezed of time. I think 20 minutes will be okay for you to do your submission. Thank you, sir. You guys go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Chair and honorable members, thank you very much for inviting me before this distinguished committee. And thank you again for accommodating the very respectful request that we had made to request for adjustment of time because this morning again we'll be appearing before another committee of this house, and we really appreciate that you are able to accommodate us so that we can discharge our duties of being accountable to the institutions of accountability, including the committees of Parliament. Honorable Chair, I have heard the scope of the petition as read out by the legal counsel. However, I wanted to start with a caveat that we had this petition was forwarded to us with 3 very specific issues that we were required to address. Namely, to be able to look at the petition as forwarded to us and explain the circumstances under which, for what the petitioner calls more than 15 years since the post-election violence of 2007-2008, the petitioners in the Nyanza western regions of Kenya have not been compensated. Secondly, to address the issue of verification and compensation of such IDPs in those 2 regions should be compensated, and of course any other matter that arises therefrom. Our response to those 3 issues as set out in the petition is as follows: that the number of internally displaced persons in Nyanza and western regions as a result of the 2007-2008 post-election violence, according to the records of the government, were 50,442 from Nyanza region, which is the counties of Kisumu, Siaya, Migori, Homa Bay, Kisii, and Nyamira, and 14,084 for the western region, mainly Vihiga, Bungoma, Kakamega counties. Chair, when the post-election violence occurred, 2007-2008, the period thereafter, the ministry responsible for internal security at that time, and the Ministry of responsible for special programs, put up a team, which team was to verify and profile internally displaced persons across the country. with a view to having them compensated or resettled. That program was a national program, and as the petitioners correctly point out, this obligation of government stems from both the constitution of our country, but also relevant international standards. And Honorable Chair and members, the Constitution does prohibit any form of indignity, and therefore displacement would form a violation of that edict by the Constitution. The same Constitution provides for the application of principles of international law, including the principles related to displaced persons, the rights of persons who are displaced. In this context, therefore, Chair and members, the government went out of its way to make sure persons who were displaced as a result of the post-election violence of 2007-2008 were resettled or otherwise compensated in accordance with the relevant international and national legal standards. I have given the figures from the two regions because the petition was limited to those two regions, Nyanza and Western region of Kenya. This process was carried out across the country, and three categories of IDPs were identified. First, those who had suffered minimal loss. They are displaced, yes, but that displacement was minimal in terms of physical displacement, but also the losses incurred. And each of those across the country was paid 10,000 shillings. And category 2 were those IDPs who had suffered partial loss and partial displacement, which is a mid-level displacement. Those were paid 25,000 each. The last category were those who had suffered total loss of shelter and were displaced, and each of those was paid 50,000 Kenya shillings. And with regard to the regions in question, Honorable Chair, Nyanza region received compensation in the following manner. I have provided in the written statement the details, but if I could just highlight that Siaya County had 5,908 IDPs. The amount used to compensate them was approximately 61.3 million, and the entire amount was disbursed to the qualifying persons. With regard to Kisumu County, 10,013 IDPs were profiled. The amount used to compensate them was 129.9 million, and the amount used in Kisumu was 120 million. 9 million was not used for reasons which I'll explain in the course of this submission. Homa Bay, 3,930 IDPs, 25 million, and out of the 25 million, 1.4 million was not used, was not distributed. Migori, 2,916 IDPs, 96.5 million, the entire sum was disbursed. Kisii, 23,001 IDPs, 106.9 million disbursed. The entire figure was utilized. Nyamira, 6,674 IDPs and 45.7 million disbursed. The entire sum, except 40,000 shillings, was used. Honorable Chair, if I may continue, we have shown how the same amount of money that I've read out in the counties was distributed in the sub-counties. So you go to Siaya, you'll find the portion that went to Bondo, Rarieda, Ugenya, sub-counties. And with regard to Siaya County, I would like to make two remarks. One, Rarieda sub-county indicate that none of the 853 IDPs who had been profiled was compensated. They failed to meet the requirements, the criteria for compensation. The second remark, Honorable Chair and members, is that most IDPs profiled in Ugenya sub-county were compensated. However, 86 people could not present required documents within the set timelines. And that explains why some money was not used and was returned to the department, the State Department of Special Programs. Honorable Chair, with regard to Kisumu County, again the figures are there for Kisumu East, Kisumu West, and Nyando, Nyakach, and Muhoroni. And I would like to make the following comments in respect of Kisumu County. One, that funds received by Kisumu East Sub-County on IDPs were not used for those IDPs who failed to appear for payment. Some of them never even appeared. And the check numbers are given, which checks were used to return the money from to the State Department for Special Programs. The check numbers, the dates, and there are about 5 checks, all of them for various figures. For Kisumu East Sub-County. For Kisumu West Sub-County, all the funds that were received were paid out to the IDPs. For Nyando, Nyakach, and Muhoroni sub-counties, which by that time were all under the former Nyando district, a total of 3.5 million which was received was not used again because the IDPs failed to appear for payment, or in the alternative did not meet the criteria set out for compensation, and the money was reverted back to the State Department for Special Programs. Honorable Chair, with regard to Homa Bay County, again the breakdown per sub-county is provided on page 6 of my written statement, which has already been filed. But I would like to make the following comments regarding Homa Bay County. A, Suba sub-county did not receive any funds for IDP compensation because there were no persons profiled as IDPs from that sub-county. Karachuonyo South, North, and East, which were at that time under the larger Rachuonyo district, the funds, some funds amounting to 110,000 were reverted to the government for lack of the claimants did not meet the criteria. Rangwe and Dewa sub-counties, which were at that time under the larger Homa Bay district, again about 1,350,000 was reverted back to government, and within the three categories of 10,000, 25,000, 50,000, none of the IDPs from Homa Bay County was paid the 50,000 amount. Honorable Chair, Migori County again, the table indicates the distribution per sub-county, and the comment I need to make there is that all IDPs who were profiled were compensated from Migori County. Kisii County, again, the breakdown per sub-county is provided, and the amounts which were paid are also indicated. Honorable Chair, with regard to Nyamira County, the distribution per sub-county is provided. The total amount disbursed for IDPs within Nyamira County was 45.7 million shillings, and the details are provided on the table on page 8 of my written statement. Honorable Chair, I would like to continue to say that the government is committed to address the plight of post-election violence IDPs, that is the IDPs arising out of the 2007-2008 post-election violence, and this is reflected in the allocation of a total of 465 million shillings, 545,000 to the Nyanza region for compensation of IDPs. The last tranche of funds, which was 136.4 million, was distributed to Kisumu and Migori counties on 11th December 2017. Approximately 97% of the funds were efficiently utilized. The unused amount is 3%, which is 11.3 million shillings. It was reverted back to the State Department for Special Programs, and in our estimation, the IDP compensation program was concluded satisfactorily. All the counties in Nyanza region, from our inquiries, confirm that there are no IDP camps within those counties at the moment. The government facilitated reintegration of all profiled legitimate IDPs into the communities, and those who were displaced from other regions and were willing to return to their former homes were reconciled with host communities and assisted to rebuild. Honorable Chair, members, the Western region received compensation funds as below. 1. Vihiga County, a total of 484 households from Vihiga district that time, currently Vihiga County, qualified for the 10,000 category of IDPs, and a total of 342 IDPs qualified under the 50,000 shillings compensation category. In Hamisik sub-county, 234 households were paid 10,000 each, and the details of the funds, how the funds were channeled, are provided. 2 names were cancelled due to shared ID numbers. Another 40 names from Vihiga were cancelled due to lack of identification card numbers. And there is only one complainant, Mr. Clifford Songore of ID number 32657-422, who claims not to have been compensated. An IDP register for Emuhaya district, currently Emuhaya and Luanda sub-counties, shows that a total of 723 IDPs who have not been compensated, showed that we have 723 IDPs who have not been compensated to date. And I think this is something that we are following up to verify the reasons why that number is outstanding. For Kakamega sub-county, the county had a total of 5,672 affected persons, that is IDPs. A total of 3,933 households were paid 10,000 each. 79% of the households were paid 25,000 each. 1,931 were paid 50,000 each, and 2 households were paid 200,000 each because of the extent of the loss. Bungoma County had approximately 6,713 IDPs. Out of these, 1,100 were not paid due to various reasons. That is, lack of ID cards, names not matching with ID card produced, damaged ID cards, and not turning up at all during the payment. The total number of IDPs included 2,447 from Kapsiro and Cheptai sub-counties who were as a result of the Sabaot Land Defense Force land conflict between 2000 and 2008 between Sabaot clans, mainly Dorobo and Soi Sabaot. They were paid in 2 phases, 10,000 and 25,000, and they were resettled in Chepuk phase 1, but phase 2 and 3 is not yet complete. Currently, there is a case in court where one Geoffrey Misiko and 12 others have a case versus the county commissioner then and the manager KCB among others, and the case number is E001 of 2022. In Busia County, a total of 249 households were paid 50,000 each, totaling to 12.4 million shillings. 149 people, that is IDPs, were not paid again due to not meeting the criteria. Honorable Chair, what these statistics demonstrate is the government, through Operation Rudi Nyumbani, ensured that all qualified and deserving IDPs, including IDPs from Nyanza region and the Western region, as I have outlined, were either reintegrated or resettled or compensated in the manner in which I have explained to this committee. We also ensured, government ensured, adequate public sensitization by use of notice boards, barazas, visiting IDP camps, and mainstream media. The IDPs were also informed on the requirements and criteria, date and venue for compensation. The profiled IDPs were required to provide evidence and documents to support their claims. However, some of the claimants either could not provide the required documents or did not appear when they were scheduled to appear for payment. In this regard, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, if there are any bona fide internally displaced persons in Nyanza, in Western, or any other part of Kenya, I would like to pledge on behalf of the government that it is the legal obligation of government to respect and enforce the fundamental rights and freedoms of all Kenyans, including Kenyans who have been displaced from their homes, not only as a result of the post-election violence, but also as otherwise determined under the legal criteria. As I have said, Chair and honorable members, that duty stems from the Constitution of our country, the laws of our country, and our international obligations, which stem out of Article 2.5 and 2.6 of the Constitution of Kenya, which incorporates international legal standards, which Kenya is a party to as part of the laws of our country. In that regard, any Kenyan, including the petitioners, who fall under the legal definition of internally displaced persons who may be aggrieved, not only out of the post-election violence of 2007-2008, may enforce their rights, and as I have said, the government is committed to fulfilling its obligations on internally displaced persons in Nyanza region, Western region, and all the parts of our country. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Waziri. I think that was a very good and candid presentation. Sometimes you listen to government officials and you can tell between the lines some information is not coming out clearly. But from a presentation, whatever is positive, whatever is negative, has come out very clearly. So, because we have another petition that we would want you to handle before we let you go, I'll give members 15 minutes to interact with you on individual questions. I think Honorable Nyikal, out of the 15 minutes, you can take 5 because you are a member and you are also the petitioner. So you can go first.
Thank you, Chair. Let me also appreciate this opportunity and also appreciate the work the Cabinet Secretary has done. I think it's gone through the records well, but I'll say that therein lies the problem, that those records is where the problem is. And I'll try to be really short. I happened to be there during this period. I can actually say I was probably the only government officer who was able to move around the country at the time. And the history of IDPs created 2 kinds of IDPs. I've seen your categorization. IDPs from Central that were actually from Rift Valley, mainly, were settled in camps. I can tell you the camps. I actually established them in Naivasha 2, in Eldoret we had 2, Tabo 1, in Nairobi we had 1, Kikuyu 1, Tigoni. We had camps in Thika and so on. So mainly those from Central actually stayed in the camps. IDPs from Nyanza and Western largely stayed in camps momentarily. Kikuyu, Tigoni, in Nakuru, it was basically the stadium. At the showground, those were again mainly people from Central and from Rift Valley. and they stayed put. So before the end, things settled and your work started, this Operation Rudi Nyumbani, most of the IDPs from Nyanza and Western were actually integrated in their homes. Not much through government system, but basically going to stay with their relatives. Except partly Nyamira, Kisii, and also a little bit in Eldoret from Western Kenya and Tabo. Now, when Operation Rudi Nyumbani came, these people were mainly in the homes. So the identification was actually something done a little afterwards. The people who stayed in the camps were clear. They were there. The numbers were known. So that is the first difference that came. So if you now came to the identification and you had three groups, there is one group that is missing, even your people.
A minute, Honorable Jikal. Our Vice Chair is come on virtual. Allow me to request her to introduce herself. Honorable Janet, we have the CS Interior. Kindly introduce yourself.
I can hear you.
Yeah, kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Janet Sutiene, MP Tarbo, and a member of the committee and Vice Chair. Chair, I'm sorry I did not catch a flight in the morning. I'm just traveling now.
It's okay. We have quorum and we are handling it very well. Wazir has already done a very good presentation. Hope to meet you soon. But keep listening until you get the flight.
Okay, thanks. So when now you have the categories, oh, she's still on.
Sorry, Honorable Nikala, allow me to ask the member who have just walked in to introduce herself.
Morning, everyone. My name is Edith Nyenze, Member of Parliament, Kitui West, and a member of this committee. I'm sorry I'm late. Thank you.
Okay, so when now you had the categories, now the people who stayed in the camps were easy to identify. The people who integrated were very difficult to identify, and that's where most of the Nyanza and some of Western people are. And there's a category I haven't had. There were people who were actually resettled and land, I think purchased, and were even given money for houses with a compensation up to about 400,000. I've not seen that category here. So that's why I'm saying you've done well with the records, but some of the records I think we may have to look at. So we may want to know more about that. And so that's where the difference is. Land given, even payment for housing up to 400,000. So we haven't seen that one here. Then, and that would not include anybody from Western and Nyanza at all. Those were basically people from Central Province. If we were to go back historically, you can understand that people from Central, when they moved to Rift Valley, they moved. They had nowhere to go. People from Nyanza who are in these places had their, what they called their homes. We had even a problem trying to settle people in Nyeri. They were actually told they don't belong here. So that was the issue. So now the difference came because these were easily identified, their plight was obvious. The other people were in the homes, integrated, shared their suffering and their poverty with their people. So in my view, the identification was probably not adequate. Now, quickly, therefore, when you now come, your records also indicate this. You had some money that was not used because the people did not turn up or did not have the documents. What documents were required from these people who had moved and some were just accommodated relatives and saved their lands? What were these documents required for identification? Now, the other thing is some IDPs never turned up. Do we have information, these people who didn't turn up, did they die? What happened to them? Or was it false records? So that issue, it brings the issue. So in Kisumu County, when you mention, you don't, I think Seme is not even included in the list at all. So that I can tell you all the people there are therefore, I don't know what happened to them. So that shows a very major inadequacy in what you have. Nyanza, you talk of nobody's in IDP camps. In Nyanza, to a large extent, there were maybe Kisii and Nyamira, but there were really no IDP camps. People went to their homes and tried to integrate. In Kisii, some people even came back to Rift Valley and were in those camps. So again, do our records take care of that? And you have IDPs that were not paid. Now, with this, CS, you've done a good thing with the records, but I think the records are inadequate because when we made this petition and when I presented it, actually it had a huge number of people with names who are IDPs, or to use officially, are claiming to be IDPs. So when we go towards saying the work has been completed, it can't be completed before we either disapprove these people as fake, and that, I think the committee had the opportunity to meet their representatives, and they're very strong. So who are these people? And there are many. And when they give you their stories, it is. So either you will have to now get those people with those big documents and say, you have been paid, you have been paid, you have been paid, and you are fake, because you have chiefs and assistant chiefs who can actually verify this information. So I think there is still some work to be done there. And I appreciate your ending statement that if there are bona fide IDPs, the government is open to look at them. The question then is, which is the work that is remaining? How do we determine those bona fide IDPs who the government can still look at? Because I've told you, with the records, I can see where there are defects. If say there's nobody at all, then the records in Nyanza can't be right. There are people who didn't come up, the records can't be right. There are people who came up, but their documents couldn't prove, the records can't be right. So my prayer, Chair, I appreciate the work done, but it's my conclusion that adequate work has not been done. I do appreciate the difficulty of identifying people who went to their homes and didn't stay in camps. I realize there may be people who are trying to take advantage who are not IDPs, but you have the means and the personnel on the ground to identify, so that we bring this thing once and for all to a conclusion. So, Chair, it is I'm grateful, but mine is that the work cannot be complete until we have a way of dispensing with the large list that I brought in a way that will satisfy them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nyikal. You remember when you came here with the petition, I assured you of justice to your people, and we will get to every point so that you can get justice to your people. It's it can't be complete until SEME has been mentioned and we have data on SEME. So, Waziri, allow me, because Honorable Walter has a concern and is online. Let me give him the opportunity to pose his question. Honorable Walter? Walter, can you hear me?
Thank you for the opportunity. I can hear you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity. I want to thank Waziri for the good presentation. However, having met some of these IDPs 2 weeks ago in Migori, I think some details are missing from the list that he has. First, I heard him talk about how much compensation was received, and he's never mentioned anything to do with some people who are compensated 400,000 shillings and given land. Secondly, he's talked about some people not having met the criteria. I don't know what the criteria was set, what kind of a criteria we are talking about, but when you listened to some of the IDPs, there is one, Mr. Ndege, from Karachuonyo in Homa Bay County, who was in Naivasha. The guy who was locked in the house, inside the house, and his entire family members burned in that house. This guy has never received compensation. So when we are talking about criteria, I do not know what kind of criteria a person like this, who made news all over, was House. So, I think some people may not have been able to meet whatever is called criteria because of the shock and the trauma that is associated with whatever they went through. So I want to request the Cabinet Secretary, we know he's a hard worker, to kindly relook into this matter. Some people may also have taken advantage to try and forge their ways in or fake their ways in. But we have a way of identifying the genuine IDPs who went through whatever they went through and are yet to be compensated. And it feels quite bad when they know that their colleagues or counterparts they were together with in some of those areas, having been compensated fully by the government, while they are still waiting. They are really feeling neglected and discriminated against by the government. So, Waziri, kindly relook into this matter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Water. Keep listening. Yeah. Honorable Kivai or Kagesi was part of the team which visited the IDPs. Allow me to give him an opportunity to pose his concerns. Then you can take the concerns from the three members.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me join my colleagues in thanking you, Waziri, for the work you've done so far. Yes, I can confirm I was in the team that went to meet these IDPs in Migori about 2 weeks ago. It was a very moving experience, Waziri, very moving. And I think part of the issues have been raised there by my colleague online. In fact, most of the points I had for you have been brought up very well with the petitioner, Daktari here. I think going back to the people I met and what they spoke, incidentally, in that group we met, I don't know where you have classified people from Transoya. They were there. They were part of the Western group, and they were quite a sizable delegation, Transoya County. Everybody stood and talked, and we listened, and we questioned them. Now, listening to this issue of criteria, I really wonder whether any of those people we talked to has ever met a government official. My colleague there has talked of Bwanandege, and he talked there and then he collapsed. Because if anybody talked to Bwanandege, what other evidence would you want? There is a lady who gave us a moving story from Limuru, and so many others. So if those people are genuine, then I don't understand how they've been missed out. Because most of them were saying they have not seen an official, anybody. So that brings the question of the period that this exercise was being done. And you say in your closing remarks that all was done to sensitize this matter. I just wonder how true it is, because I actually was there with them. So I just want to join in with what Dr. Nyikal has raised, because they are the same concern. But just add that having seen these people, I remember walking out and saying, pesa ni kitu mbaya, nikiwa na pesa, even if I had an extra shilling, I would have given them, those people. Those Kenyans are suffering, Waziri. Thank you.
Members, kindly allow me to allow Waziri to respond to the concerns from the three members, Walter, Nyikal, and Kagesi.
Honorable Chair and distinguished members, thank you. I first want to agree with the honorable members who have spoken that it is also my view that we still have some work to do on the issue of IDPs, and it is unfortunate that what happened in our country in 2007, 2008, will remain for a long time to be the clearest demonstration of the ugly side of our politics, because quite a number of people, families were permanently damaged because of the events of violence during that year. First, Honorable Chair, the issue of IDPs, in my view, is a human rights issue. So, even if I said that that program ended, and according to government, we did what we thought ought to have been done, the matter cannot be closed because there is no statute of limitations on fundamental rights and freedoms. It will be a live matter forever. It's about human rights. You cannot close human rights and say it's over. And therefore, what I want to assure this committee is that we will remain seized of the matter, and not just about 2007-2008 post-election violence victims, but other internally displaced persons who meet the legal criteria across our country. Honorable Chair, the unutilized funds which were returned to the government were occasioned by various reasons. Many of the people who had claimed to be IDPs could not prove that they were indeed displacement. Some of them were imposters. There were imposters in the camps. There were also imposters claiming to be integrated in their initial communities with relatives, but there was no proof of displacement. Others had presented fake documents, and yet others who claimed to be IDPs, when they were asked to come for compensation, never showed up, a significant number. So there were various reasons for these funds returning to the Treasury. SEME is not included. We do not have records that we had profiled IDPs from SEME who met the criteria and were left out, but that is something we can look into. As I said, the matter cannot be closed at any time. It is a live matter for as long as Kenya exists. It's part of our ugly history. We must move towards closure, and whenever new evidence emerges, we will deal with it. Honorable Chair, it is true also, as stated by one of the members, that a few IDPs were paid 400,000, and it is true I did not include that in my categorization, because the few cases of payment of 400,000 was cost, or those cases were justified by very peculiar circumstances which can only be explained in a case-by-case basis. But it is true, as the member stated, as the member for SEME. Honorable Chair, it is also true, from my own knowledge as a Kenyan, that there were very elaborate press reports of a Mr. Ndege who suffered huge losses including death of almost the entire family in Naivasha, if my recollection serves me right. I'll be surprised if such a person was displaced wherever he is in this country and has not been resettled or compensated, because I read graphic details of the story of Mr. Ndege and his family. I want to assure you, Chair and members, that that is a case that I want to take it up with my officers, because it's a case which is in the public domain. Sometimes certain things that come to our knowledge should not be subjected to to the strictures of where is the proof. I remember very vividly a fellow who had been burnt, the face was burnt, every part of his body was scarred, and he claimed to have lost all his children, and I think his 2 spouses or something like that. So that is something I want to commit to take it up as a follow-up of this petition. Chair, with regard to Trans Nzoia is in Rift Valley. That's why we didn't have any statistics, because the petition was asking for IDPs in Nyanza and Western region. Otherwise, we are willing to, if there are specific issues around Trans Nzoia, we can address them as a follow-up of this interaction. Finally, Honorable Chair, I want to assure this committee that we are open to ensuring that all Kenyans get justice, and that no Kenyan is treated differently from other Kenyans for whatever reason. And therefore, we will continue getting engaged, and we want to request for the cooperation of members, the support of the committee, the support of the National Assembly as representatives of the people, to continue dealing with these things until we achieve complete justice for every person in our country and close this chapter that has scarred our nation's history. Finally, Chair, is also to agree with some of the members who have raised the issues that this space of IDPs, we are also aware as security managers that this space has been invaded by so many imposters and people who want to benefit from a process by presenting fake narratives, fake stories, and therefore we'll be careful as much as we want closure, so that our people who are not qualified internally displaced persons do not use this process for unjust enrichment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, CS. Honorable members, because of time, we have another petition which Waziri will be handling, and we would request we take that minutes so that we can release you. Waziri, a few things have come out, and I want to...
On a procedural issue, Chair, unfortunately, the second petition that you're referring to doesn't seem to have come to our attention. So I beseech you, Chair, if you could clarify what that petition is, because we only had this petition. It could have been a communication breakdown. We are happy to return before this committee another time, but at the moment we are not seized of a second petition.
Okay, Waziri, I will get to that. In concluding the matter of the refugees in Western and Nyanza region, Waziri, we've listened to you very carefully, your report. You have the information, you have the data, the statistics, and I know you are talking from a point of reports handed over to you by your predecessors. And during that time, it was murky. Things were not clear. As in, you see an helicopter flying in an area which is not clear. Sometimes we ask ourselves, what happens when the dust settles? At that time, people were trying to be compensated. Things were trying to be settled down, but there was still dust hovering. Now dust has settled. The saying that what happens when the dust settles down is where we are now. I think Honorable Nyikal, because if you touch on Nyanza and you don't touch on Seme, and it's very clear we had IDPs in Seme, that are an issue of concern. When this matter came to our table, I went back and researched. I went back to refresh my mind about the issue of 2007, 2008. And Mr. Ndege was the face of the whole calamity, both locally and internationally. BBC, CNN, our local media, Ndege was the face of this post-election violence. And if Ndege has not been compensated up to now, for heaven's sake, it is very clear there are several Kenyans. Yes, we know there are people who try to take advantage and lie to get compensation as refugees. And the government has enough infrastructure and system to deal with those people. But I'm happy, as a lawyer, you've indicated that human rights issues cannot be closed. So whoever had put down that this matter has been closed, I'm happy to hear that you've opened it up to look into it. So I believe we can leave it at that now that the government has opened this matter up and the government has the requisite tools to identify and see who was really affected and was not compensated, who is trying to lie to be compensated. There are people who got 400,000. I would also want to know what was the peculiarness in getting 400,000 when Mr. Ndege has not yet been compensated. So we leave it at
order, Chair. Order, Chair.
You can't tell the chair
No,
order.
Chair,
you can only raise a point of order.
That is exactly what we are doing, point of order. It would be unfair, Chair.
Maro, I've not given you the mic.
Yes, please do.
We had 2 points of order. Can you allow me to finish the flow of what I was trying to say? Then Maro, I'll give you an opportunity. Yeah, Waziri, what I was saying to say, because of the interest of time, we have to close this matter, and I know members are very concerned. We have serious concerns, so members will try to summarize so that we can we will have Waziri touch on the issues you want to be touched on. Then I will conclude on what I'm trying to say. So, Honorable Marwa.
Thank you, Chair. The reason, Waziri, why I'm insisting on bringing up certain issues is so that your records are accurate. It is only out of accuracy that you are going to conclude this matter conclusively. Waziri, if you look at your table 1, it is reported that Siaya County total amount reversed is 0, having received 61,320,000 100,000. But on your breakdown, on your table 2, Waziri, you'll note that Siaya on breakdown, there is a column that says number who failed to appear for payment. And this number is quite substantial. It is 1,608. And in your very own column, it says that each was to receive 10,000 shillings. So if they did fail to appear, then it would therefore mean, Waziri, that that money is available for them when they do appear. And therefore, the first table that says that total amount that was reversed as appearing as 0 is therefore not true. Secondly, Waziri, last parliament, the 12th parliament, I sat in the committee of special funds. One of our responsibilities was to go to Rongai, Nakuru County, and Molo and Njoro. It was about a land settlement fund. And land settlement fund was the fund that government used to compensate IDPs. As we speak, Waziri, and I want you to kindly go and check this, so many of those IDPs are still staying in IDP camps. There was a good effort to remove them from the camps where they were housed in tents, and then there was effort to put them in camps that were more dignified, and they were given land that they needed to go and till. That matter, unless it was solved yesterday, it's still live. We went to these farms. They are staying in camps. Kindly, Waziri, when you do retreat, kindly go and have a look at that, so that when you are concluding IDPs, matters IDPs, it's totally concluded. I want to appreciate Honorable Nikal, who has alluded to some of our cultures. Waziri, I come from Korea. In your report, it says totally that there was no Korea, either Korea East or Korea West, who suffered this indignity of post-election violence. A matter which is not true, because in Dr. Nikal's petition, several Korea people have also expressed interest that the government needs to compensate them. I am not maybe going to speak too much because some of them are quite emotional. Those that were cut by power source and brought to Korea, it is impossible to say that nobody got affected. Waziri, I also want to tell you a bit of our culture. A Korea person is extremely proud, extremely proud. When they suffer these kind of things, they go back home. And usually what happens is that a neighbor, a brother, or something, they'll give you way so that you settle in dignity. A Korea you'll not find in an IDP camp. And for that reason, and there are so many of such cultures who opted to just go back home. And the very terminology, Operation Rudi Nyumbani, defeated the whole idea of compensation. Because if it's an Operation Rudi Nyumbani and already people have left and gone back and they have been given space to stay in their homes, then again, that element of compensation would then miss that point, or they would miss out in that process. Some of them, Waziri, as you know, we stay along the border. Probably some of them found refuge there. And having gone through that kind of trauma, probably took so much time for them to come back. And when they did come back, it was said that the program is closed. So, Waziri, I plead with you that all this, every Kenyan got affected, but they took the effects differently. Everybody, you know, some even helped government. I'll tell you, and I want to thank you for coming to Isibania, is it 2 weeks ago? The young man called Mwangi, who was brutally murdered in Hispania and therefore caused all that you saw there, is one of the people who the people of Korea integrated. When the IDP, the post-election violence was happening, Korea became a safe haven. And that is why there's so many people from central Kenya who are residents of Hispania and Korea. He came as a young man around that time and worked his way bottom up to become what he became. And for that is why the people of Korea were very emotional when he was killed, having come from such a background. So we have a lot of things to say about this thing. I think the bottom line, Professor Nikal, is that we do have data that appears to be good data to close a case, but I don't think, Waziri, that this is conclusive. It is not conclusive at all. And Waziri, as I conclude, there are many, and I really appreciate the way you put it, that it is not only IDPs out of post-election violence, any indignity that causes people to be displaced, you be willing, and indeed the Constitution envisages that they need to be addressed. And that is why, equally around the same time you came to Korea, we had another incident. We have so many issues that are bedeviling this country around that. People being displaced from their farms, from their original homes, and then they are settled or integrated within their own either relatives or friends. And all these are IDPs. And Waziri will be coming to you, so that you can help us and also help this country settle itself and live with itself. I thank you very much, and sorry for taking too long.
Thank you, Honorable Marwa. Let me, Honorable Kandia.
Thank you, Chair. I think I want to also congratulate the CS for giving us a very comprehensive statement on this issue of IDPs. Mine is a very simple one. It has to do with Kenyans not forgetting what happened in 2007, 2008. What measures are you putting in place so that our Kenyans don't forget what happened in 2007 and 2008, especially in making sure that we don't have a repeat of what happened in 2007?
Yeah, Honorable Caleb.
Thank you, Waziri, for your elaborate and on-point presentation. You are a super Waziri, and I know the petitioners' prayers will be dealt with. One question. You've said that those people who were supposed to be compensated, and one reason or another, they failed to appear. Is it an ongoing process? Because since 2007, have they been compensated? Or if they appear now, will they be compensated? My question is it an ongoing process for compensation? Or when they appear, will they be compensated? Question number 2. Do we have funds in the humanitarian fund? Now that we have a petitioner who has petitioned and he wants his people compensated, do you have that kind of fund to compensate the IDPs? If not, are you planning to sort a cabinet statement so that some funds are released for the petitioners' people to be compensated? Thank you.
Okay, was Honorable Edith. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me take this time to congratulate the Waziri for the hard work. You are doing well, and congratulations. My concern, although you have said that the issue of IDPs should be it's a life matter, I'm just wondering whether there was for this particular one, for 2007, 2008 post-election violence IDPs, was there a set period of time on when to identify the IDPs? Because sometimes it can be a challenge even to the government to keep on settling people So my concern is whether there was a set period. Then for the National Consultative Coordination Committee, the committee which was dealing with the IDPs, is it still operational? And what is its status? Thank you.
Okay, Waziri, you can take that.
Thank you. Honorable Chair, if you allow me, before I answer the latest queries from the honorable members, that matter of the second petition, I've just been told that a letter was received this morning.
Waziri, let's conclude with this one.
Yeah.
Then we will finish with the second one.
Yeah, I just wanted to amend.
I agreed.
I wanted to amend what I said earlier, that we had not received.
Allow me to say.
Yeah.
Let's conclude with the refugee thing.
Okay.
Then we will have a 5-minute discussion on that petition before we close.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I stand guided. Chair, I agree with the member who has said that there is a discrepancy between the table. I think the member for Korea East. The discrepancy between the table, the first table, and the details on CIA. To that extent, I agree. There is that inconsistency which I'm willing to look at. However, on the question of those who did not appear, whether or not, if they appear, they will be compensated. Our assumption is that they were not bona fide claimants, because if you make a claim, a notice is issued that the process of settling that claim is ongoing and you don't show up. Yet, on the other hand, we have had cases of fake documents, imposters in camps and other places. Our conclusion, our presumption, therefore, is that we assume that that claimant was not bona fide and they chickened out from the process. That was our reasonable assumption. With regard to the camps in Rongai, again, as I have said, that the matter cannot, a human rights matter cannot be closed, because the statute of limitations do not apply to the respect for and the protection of fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual. They are entrenched and they are perpetual. You cannot say from here to here we can respect human rights, but from here, if you don't enforce your rights now, you can't enforce them later. That's not available. It's not lawful. With regard to the matter, again, which I think was raised by the chair himself on the 400,000, the purpose of the compensatory amount, and that's why some were given 10,000, others 25,000, others 50,000. Part of the assessment was to answer to the question of the nature of the loss. And the nature of the loss was influenced by factors like the kind of shelter which this person was displaced from, what kind of shelter, what size of land, because the purpose of the program on compensation is to ensure restorative justice. So a person who has minimal losses cannot get the same as somebody who has extensive losses. In fact, and I want to say perhaps the compensation was not up to value, but at least you need a criteria, again depending on the size of loss, the size of damage, and that's why the few that got 400,000 got that amount of money. With regard to the assertion by the member for Korea East on people from Kuria East or Kuria West constituency who are in the list of the claimants presented by the petition by the Honorable Nyikal, we will study that list and subject it to the same criteria. And if those claimants they meet the criteria, they are genuine people, it can be ascertained they were displaced, and that they have proof of loss or damage, we will also treat them like the other cases. The member for Baringo Central did raise a very fundamental issue, which I think is an issue for our national discussion as various stakeholders in our national project of building a nation. And the member asked, what measures have we taken as the country's security managers to make sure that this ugly past of what happened in 2007, 2008 does not recur? And I want to respond by pledging to the member and also to the committee that what happened in 2007, 2008 should never and cannot be allowed to recur again. If Kenya did not learn from 2007, then it shall never learn. So what we are doing at the moment is to, first of all, acknowledge that what happened during that year is a result of two things. One is the culture of impunity, and two is the culture which we are gradually building in this country, generally across various parts of the country, generally across political formations, and that is the culture of violent resolution of grievances. The resolution of grievances, whether political grievances, economic grievances, of unemployment, political grievances, or whatever differences. And so the measures we have taken in this administration is to implement the directives that the President has given us to depoliticize the machinery of the country that handles security and remove it from politics of whatever type, including politics of the ruling party. Because when you politicize the instruments of state for national security, you make them impotent to deal with national security threats, especially when those threats emanate from violence and disruptive resolution of political differences. Because already the organs of national security will have taken sides. In most cases, they'll have taken sides in favor of the government of the day. We are very clear in our mind, it is the policy of the government that all the organs of national security must stay out of politics. And we are not allowed to process the politics of either the government side or to process the suppression of politicians who do not come from the party that is the governing party. Depoliticization of the security machinery of the state. Number two, enforcement. Honorable Chair, The reason why we have had this kind of issue is the culture of impunity, where people, including leaders, cause the kind of things that were caused by political rhetoric in 2007 through incitement, and nothing happens. Nothing much happened from 2007, except the 2 cases that were picked by the International Criminal Court. Nothing happened. We were unable to address the issue. So the issues are still underlying, but we will make sure we will not have another 2007, 2008. That's why we are very ruthless. Any leader of whatever nature, social leader, religious leader, political leader, who uses their position to incite public disorder, impunity, and violent resolution of any dispute, however genuine that dispute is, we will crush those people by enforcing the law ruthlessly against them, whoever they are, whether they are from the government side or from the opposition side. And that's why you've seen some of the incidents we have seen, including the violation of Isibania police station by members of the public who actually had genuine concerns about the performance of the police and other security agencies in Migori. But the solution is not to overrun a police station and break into the armory and start freeing persons in lawful custody. That's how you break down the country. So we have several cases like those. We have had the burning down of tea picking machines in Kericho and Bomet, again through incitement of leaders and impunity. The grievances around tea picking appear to me very genuine grievances. But the solution is not to destroy property and block highways where patients are using through ambulances ferrying patients are blocked simply because you have a problem with a multinational corporation. And that applies to every other dispute of whatever nature. So those are the measures we are taking. Never again will this country be allowed to slide into anarchy. We will stop the anarchists before they destroy the country. And it doesn't matter whether those anarchists are pro-government or anti-government. Honorable Chair, lastly, the member for, I think, Kitui West, I hope I got the constituency right, the Honorable Mrs. Nyenze, she has, I think there was a question on the timelines, whether there were timelines. It is true there were timelines for administrative purposes. You know, you can't, for example, if you're processing post-election IDP compensation, you have to say, okay, can all those who are affected, can we know who are affected so that you organize for budget and compensate them? So we have timelines, but as I said at the beginning, Chair, those timelines are administrative timelines to ensure efficiency in service delivery. It doesn't amount to closure of the subject matter because you cannot close human rights, enforcement of human rights. And very finally, the committee, all the apparatus of the states, let me put it this way on IDPs, because we keep on having different structures, different times are in place. So there is no institutional gap in terms of addressing the plight of IDPs. And very finally, I think the question was asked about the humanitarian fund. I think we had a legal lapse somewhere, some action that government was supposed to have done to operationalize the humanitarian fund. I want to report to this committee that last month I surrendered 2 tranches of money in 2 accounts. And these are monies that were supposed to go to the humanitarian fund, but the money has been lying dormant for 5 years in the bank, and therefore the National Treasury asks us to surrender. I remember one figure was 248 million, another figure of about 241 million, so in total about $500 million shillings, which was dormant. That money was dormant for 5 years, and according to the rules of the National Treasury, since the humanitarian, there was an institution which was supposed to be operationalized to expend, to assist in expending those funds. It had not been done, and I take responsibility for that. We had to surrender the money, but we have already initiated legislative steps which will be coming before you shortly to operationalize that organ, to make sure that the money for the humanitarian fund can be spent lawfully to assist people who are bona fide and who should get the protection of the state from displacement. I thank you.
Chair.
Order members. Honorable Caleb. Caleb.
Yes. Waziri, there is one question that maybe I didn't get it clear or you didn't answer, is the bona fide beneficiaries who didn't appear when the time of compensation, and they met all the criteria. Is it an ongoing process of compensation? Are you going to compensate them, or the exercise was blocked or locked? Were they locked out, or will they be compensated when they appear?
Mr. Chair, I answered, if I may, I answered that question. I said that program, Operation Route in Nyumbani, was closed. It's an administrative program. But any human rights issues that are still outstanding are not closed. That's how I answered that question. But the program closed because it was supposed to be time bound. You cannot keep it, in perpetuity. But the issues of IDPs is a perpetual matter. It cannot be closed by statute. It can be closed by administrative time periods. Thank you.
Yeah, Honorable
Chair, I know after this you will go into the next one, and I'll be leaving. I want to thank you once again. I like the process, the way it has gone, the way it is going. I also want to thank the CS for saying it cannot be closed. The program can close, but the essence, and that it means it will be opened. But I just want to add one more thing that we have not touched. We probably had imposters, natural. But I think during the process, there are also some irregularities that actually involved officers that were actually handling the matter that may have been responsible even for the inaccuracies that we have seen. That I think when you go back to, you can say, CS, me, I saw all this. I released those guys from mortuaries. The sick ones, I went there. I went to hospitals. It was terrible. I saw people chasing each other. Being a doctor, and this is a doctor, they can let you pass. I could pass. So it was I even told people, some of this, we will go to ICC. They laughed. But this is where we are. But thank you again. Let's open it up. And my insistence on SEME is not just because that's my constituency, but it is the gap wherever it may be in the whole process. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, CS. If you can allow,
Thank you. Let allow us, we close together. You are a friend of this committee today, so it's unfortunate. We can't allow you to run away before we conclude. Honorable members, CS, I think as we come to the conclusion of this matter, a few things have come out, and that is what I would want to sum up. First is in 2007, 2008, the government by then approached this resettlement program through the Rudi Nyumbani program. And when the Rudi Nyumbani program timelines closed, they closed the matter. But it has been unveiled through the wisdom of the CS and this committee that matters of human rights through our local law, that is Kenyan law, and international statutes, matters of human rights cannot be closed. So the issue of resettlement of people who are adversely affected in 2007, 2008 post-election violence has been reopened. Let me say that. And the Minister for Interior has agreed to take full charge of that, so that because we have been on the ground as members to listen to these IDPs, Mzendege is alive today. Mzendege was actually the picture of the whole post-election violence, locally and internationally. And Mzendege has never been assisted by government in any way. It means a lot has not been done. The closing was irregular. Waziri has mentioned depoliticization of these programs. Whoever had tried to politicize the resettlement of IDPs, I think with this government and Waziri, we can comfortably say that the program has been reopened and is depoliticized. So it will get issues right. Secondly, Waziri, as you know, and you are veteran in what we are doing, if you are sitting on my chair, I believe you would have done better than I've done, because you've done it, you have more experience. But some cases would want immediate action. From where I sit as a chair, the end result of this process is a report to Parliament. And I know one of the proposals we'll make to Parliament is we will open it up for discussion on the floor, because you have had members have a lot of interests on this matter. We can't just do a closed report. We will have to open it to the floor for discussion by members. Then if there is any thing that Waziri you would want, because part of the recommendations, we can have policy issues, we can have budgetary issues. If you feel you may need some money to, between now and then, you need some budget to resettle the likes of Mzendege, you have an opportunity to come through this petition in our report so that the Parliament can approve that. If it's something to do with legal, something to do with a legal, we may need to advise for a legal statute, some law to be enacted to govern this. Waziri, this is an opportunity to get that done. So we'll keep engaging with you on this matter. Kindly, as you have said, let the matter of resettlement of IDPs open under your office. Let it remain depoliticized, as you put it, and kindly take up the issue of Mzendege personally. If you can take it to the president, the better. But I know you have the capacity to handle Mzendege. You can't lose two wives and 7 kids and become the picture of the whole thing. And now, up to date, you have not been assisted in any way. Where is humanity, Waziri? I think, though government is perpetual, but some things which were done by previously, you guys in government have to take it serious now and get it done. So allow me, Waziri, to close that matter at that point. Then we move to the next issue. I would want to put it to you that a letter was sent on 6th March inviting you to come to this committee for a petition on an expenditure which was done under Article 223, where money was spent without approval of the control of budget and the rest. the matter was sent to 2 committees. The petition came to us, and the regularization of the expenditure went to the Budget and Appropriations Committee. The Budget and Appropriations Committee, there were about 9 items of expenditure which were done under Article 223, and one was the spender was the Minister of Interior, but the Budget and Appropriations Committee agreed with the expenditure by the Minister of Interior. So you have few issues to answer around that. We had done a letter on 6th of March. Your office responded on 14th March saying the CS was not available. Then we did a reminder on 14th April, and we've not gotten a response up to now from the reminder. Then yesterday, after our discussion, you remember I indicated to you that you have several issues which needs to be handled by this committee. So we agreed, we remind you on these 223. If you have time, you can respond. But it's clear we don't have time for you to respond on that matter of 223. So you can say something about it. Then, yeah, we close.
Chair, thank you. And I want to apologize to the committee for the previous invitation, which we were not able to honor. The date you have given, Chair, 6th of March, when the committee wrote to us seeking us to appear before you, was one of the most difficult periods that we had in the country, because it was at the height of the North Rift security crisis, where banditry had run amok, and I was perpetually out of office throughout, and I really apologize. I could not have made it that time. Also, 14th April, then that is actually when Shakahola happened, and so forth and so on. So I'm really sorry, and I want to commit that I am available at the invitation of this committee to come and dispose this matter within the next 2 weeks. We can get a date. I will honor it, and that's all what I have to say, Chair. But since this is my last space to address you, I just wanted to thank you for the courtesy that you have extended to me, you and your committee, and I'm very happy to be back before former colleagues and people we have worked with before I went into this other side. Chair, I thank you, and God bless you, and I wish you all the best in your work.
Thank you, Waziri. We also appreciate your time, and also having the